lovelies. Captain Edward von Arkham here, coming to you from on board the MHS Hysteria. Today has been quite unusual. The crew and I were in a festive mood, so we decided to find ourselves a party. And where better to find a party than Venice, Queen of the Adriatic. What a city. I have been to Venice in umpteen different time periods, and every time I have had a fantastic time, and only occasional run-ins with the authorities. Any which way and how, we had been to Venice so many times we were beginning to run out of options of when to visit. We rarely visit the 62nd century, so we decided on the year 6135. In hindsight, I would advise any and all wanderlusting chrononauts to avoid Venice in the year 6135. By the 60th century, Venice is not only a floating city, but a flying city, kept aloft by 5 massive propellers with the waterways contained in steel-bottomed canals. We all got dressed and blessed in our most extravagant attire. I put on my fanciest coat and polished my hat and watch and goggles. Lytton put on his beaky raven mask, Elsa put on her best dress, Oft wore his gold lame waistcoat, and Matilda wore her brand new cloak. We looked splendid. We docked the Hysteria at the Venetian arsenal and set out for a night on the town, looking for crowds of revelers to join. However, there were none. The streets were completely deserted. Not a soul was stirring. Not one single skyboat in the air. Not even any traditional gondolas in the canal. The only light came from the glowing orange ether-shrouded moon. I have been to Venice hundreds of times, and there has always been some manner of party going on. It's never been deserted. We were perplexed. Matilda suggested that we get back on the ship and fly off, but my curiosity was ravenous. We started off down the Grand Canal looking for any signs of movement. There was naught but silence. You could have heard the sound of a feather falling into the water. The age-old edifices, 1,000 times rebuilt, loomed above us like cold, jagged stalagmites. I didn't say anything at the time, but my keen nostrils thought they detected a rank fetor in the air. But then the wind changed direction, and all 5 of us could smell it. The unmistakable stench of rotting flesh. Just then the silence was broken by a spine-shaking sound that seemed to be carried on the rancid odor. A deep, hollow moaning. We followed the sound around the corner to what appeared to be a wide stone courtyard square, and in the distance we could see what looked like a vast shadow moving towards us. And as the shadow lumbered into the moonlight, we could clearly see what it was. It was a mob, and there were thousands of them. Brainless, empty husks of former men and women. In the grand scheme of things, it was odd that we were the ones who started running, for they were the victims, after all. Victims of corpus anacrosis. A horrifically mutated strain of malaria that rots the brain to death and then restarts the heart, turning the victim into a mindless, undead monstrosity, hundreds of which were now chasing us across the streets of Venice. They were slow, but they were everywhere, crawling out of the shadows as if spawned by them. The entire city had been infected. We managed to dash all the way across the Rialto Bridge and back to the Venetian arsenal, only to be met by another throng of zombies. We were dressed for a party. We weren't armed. Thinking quickly, I told the crew to cover their ears and released an electrosonic debilitation pulse from my hat. That was enough to stun the ghouls in time for us to reach the Hysteria. We were safe, but we couldn't very well leave such a beautiful and historic city infested with brain-hungry zombies. I instructed Lytton to fly us over the Grand Canal. As we flew over, the rest of us dumped the 12 barrels of Elsa's leftover goat meat stew into the water, luring the zombies into the canal like starving vultures. I then instructed Lytton to fly us to the city's central pipeworks and drop off myself and Oft. Oft and I swiftly rushed inside and found the main control room, where we drained the water from the canals, taking the zombies with it. The undead beasts were swept out of the city and were instantly decimated by its massive propellers. Just another Italian holiday for the MHS Hysteria. Well, that's our time for today. I'm going to clean the smell of death off of my fancy coat. Until next time, stay mad, my duckies. And the weather for northern Italy today will be an 80% chance of precipitate rain, gondolas, and bits of shredded zombie.